Would you trust your eyes if you saw someone who shouldn't be there, in broad daylight, with no shadows to hide in? This is the true story of what happened to Julia at a scenic overlook, and why she'll never trust what she sees in the distance again. Her husband was still in the car, so who was staring at her from the other mountain? Julia and her husband, Mike, had been driving through the Blue Ridge Mountains on their annual fall getaway. It was the kind of tradition couples envy: coffee in thermoses, folk music on the radio, stopping at every overlook marked with a scenic view sign. The weather was perfect, crisp but sunny, golden leaves dancing in the breeze, the kind of day that makes you feel safe. Their third stop of the day was an overlook simply called Valley's Edge. It wasn't marked on the tourist map, which made it feel more special. Quiet, untouched. As Mike fiddled with the car's GPS, frustrated about losing signal, Julia said she'd stretch her legs. She stepped out and walked toward the wooden railing facing a breathtaking view, rolling mountains across a yawning valley. Silence, except for birds and wind. She took a deep breath, snapped a few photos, and then her eyes caught something. On the opposite mountain ridge, maybe a quarter-mile away, a tiny human shape stood perfectly still. It wasn't unusual to see hikers on the other side, except this one was staring directly at her. Unmoving, not waving, not adjusting a backpack, just standing. Curious, Julia zoomed in with her phone. And that's when her stomach dropped. The man on the other side wasn't just any hiker. He was wearing Mike's exact flannel jacket. His build, his posture, even the way his arm hung slightly bent at the elbow. It was all Mike. Except Mike was still in the car. She blinked, looked back toward the car. Yes, he was still there, scrolling on his phone. She turned back to the overlook. The figure was gone. You can convince yourself of anything when you want the world to stay normal. Julia chuckled nervously and told herself it was just a trick of the light. Maybe it was Mike, and he had wandered up behind her earlier. She turned to check. Nope, still in the car. Back at the vehicle, she casually said, "Hey, did you just come stand by me and run off or something?" Mike looked confused. "What? I've been trying to get GPS for the last 10 minutes. Why?" Julia smiled, but her hands trembled slightly as she unscrewed her water bottle. They drove on, but Julia kept checking every overlook, every trailhead, every stretch of open terrain across the valley. At their next stop, Mike went to use the public restrooms. Julia stayed by the car, scanning the distance again. There, again. Same figure, same jacket, same posture. Far off, but always looking directly at her. How far can someone follow you without ever moving? This time, she didn't blink. She stared back, but something was wrong. This one was smiling. A wide, unnatural smile, like someone trying to mimic a smile without understanding what it meant. She took a photo, zoomed in, but her screen was blurry. The face distorted, pixelated. No eyes, just shape. When she looked back up, he was gone again. By late afternoon, they stopped at a popular hiking trail that looped around a waterfall. The trail was busy, dozens of people, dogs barking, laughter. Mike wanted to hike the full loop. Julia hesitated but agreed. Maybe being around people would help. Halfway in, Julia stopped cold. Carved into the side of a tree, freshly, was a message. "Do you see me yet?" She called Mike over, but the bark had no message, just old initials. No fresh carving, gaslighting, hallucination. The trail curved again, and there he was, standing just beyond the rope fence where the cliff dropped. Still, watching. Mike shouted, "Hey! Buddy, that area's closed off." But the man didn't move. A passing ranger heard the shout. When they all looked again, no one was there. As the sun started its descent, they reached one final overlook, Sunspire Point. The view was golden, breathtaking. Julia almost didn't get out of the car, but something inside her whispered, "He'll be there." She stepped out slowly. Across the valley, at eye level, the figure stood, now closer than ever before. But this time he moved. He raised a hand and waved, not friendly, not playful. The wave was robotic, mocking. Mike came up behind her, asking, "Do you see him again?" She whispered, "He's waving." Mike squinted. "I don't see anyone." The man stepped forward, closer to the edge, then turned and walked away, back into the trees. They drove home that night in silence. No music, no stops. Julia never looked out the window again. She never showed Mike the photo. Back home, she checked her phone, and the photo was gone. Her camera roll skipped from one overlook to the next. But sometimes, when Julia's sitting at her computer at night, her screen flickers, and for a second, just a second, she sees him in the reflection, watching. In the age of deepfakes and digital ghosts, what if the scariest thing is seeing something real? Would you trust your eyes if they showed you something that can't exist? Drop your thoughts in the comments. What do you think Julia saw? Was it a doppelganger, a stalker using camouflage, or something older, hiding in plain sight? If this story gave you chills, hit that like button. Drop a comment. Have you ever seen someone who looked exactly like someone you know, but it couldn't have been them? Don't forget to subscribe for more slow burn horror stories that mess with your mind in broad daylight.